Hey guys, welcome to another East Coast Rams podcast. I am your host, Ashton, with my awesome co-host here, Zach. Victory tastes a little bit sweeter with a victory ginger ale. I always got to do this when we win. Zach, how are you doing on this beautiful victory? I guess Victory Tuesday, but victory nonetheless.
Yeah, recording this on a Tuesday. It's I'm happy we won. I kind of told you right before we started, was not happy going into the halftime. They decided finally that they were going to make second half adjustments, which they haven't done since week one. And they did it, and we got a victory. Got a complete shutout. So that was awesome. So doing well. But we got a lot of news to break down. A lot of stuff has happened over the last 48 hours.
Yes, a lot to break down. We could have two podcasts on the game itself because they're two different teams played in both halves. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Zach, let's go down all this news because the Rams were so nice and waited until we were going to record to do a bunch of moves.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. Let's talk about the first thing. Kind of the big thing on the defensive side is that Derion Kendrick, was arrested sometime early Monday morning around 2 a.m. Haven't said much other than it was a traffic violation, and then they found weed and a concealed gun in his vehicle. I'm not sure what kind of gun, hasn't said. But that is that. Sean McVay has come out and said he needs to wait for all the details to come in. They're still gathering the information. No decision has been made of his status for week 7 and beyond. Probably we'll hear something tomorrow on Wednesday. I believe that's when Sean McVay will give his update, not only on this situation, but some of the other situations that are going on the injury side of things. Any reactions to the DK arrest?
So I think it's a lot of we need to wait and see, kind of get more information about what exactly happened. Not a lot of people know that, and I think people instantly. There are a lot of people, especially on Rams Twitter, that hate DK and have a lot of reason to jump on this instantly. And he's a kid. You got to remember these athletes come into a lot of money. They're 20, 21, 22 years old. That doesn't mean what he did was right, but that means young people do stupid stuff and make mistakes, and some of us get away with it and some of us don't. And hopefully what he did, he can learn from and change from. On the football side of things, I think you have to separate the personal and the football, and whether he's putting the work in or not. Now, the personal affects the football most of the time. So if that starts affecting his football, I'm sure the Rams are going to make adjustments. And they're a very culture-like team. You've seen players get pushed out because they don't buy into the culture. I don't think this necessarily means instantly he's not a fit for the culture, and people jumping and being happy that a kid is getting arrested, I think is a little, I don't know. I think it's a little bit much just because you don't like a player for his plays.
Yeah, I think we need to find out all the information. Obviously, in California, it is not illegal to have marijuana. It is not illegal to own a firearm. So we really got to figure out all the details before we can make kind of any assumptions as far as that. As far as DK's performance, I do agree that we need to completely separate those. But his on-field performance has not been stellar. He's been pretty good when it comes to protecting the ball or protecting in the pass game. But he's made a lot of mistakes. He's been very animated, been very fiery on the field. And that's something that the Rams are usually pretty good about, kind of keeping restrained and things like that. He's had a lot of penalties on him. So from the football side of things, I do see where fans are kind of getting a little upset. Even my wife, who, is not as adamant of a football fan, just doesn't really like the attitude that she's seeing on the field. He's overly aggressive, especially definitely in this last Cardinals game, he was overly aggressive a lot in that second half. And it's just stuff that I feel like, again, that culture that you were mentioning, the Rams don't really like to have bad negative feelings into this. And hopefully they could figure out and get this turned around. But like you said, I think for the other thing, for the arrest and kind of how we see him being on this team, like Sean McVay said, we need to have all the information before we make a final judgment. We are not judge, jury, and executioner. We should get all the facts and, presumed innocent until proven otherwise. So I'll leave it at that unless you have anything else you want to add about that news.
No, I think people are judging him. Again, I've said this on this podcast a few times. I know he's not a top 10 cornerback in the league, and I think people are judging him against the scale Jalen Ramsey, against number one wide receivers. And I think that's unrealistic expectation. And I think that's why fans are getting irritated. They got spoiled with, 3-4 years of Jalen Ramsey. And now they're expecting a kid in his second year to live up to that expectation against number one wideouts.
Yeah, let's be fair. Jalen Ramsey had he had an attitude, but it was, I don't know. I guess fans maybe just, he was so good that people looked over it and they looked past the mistakes, the flags and things like that too. So again, we gotta give DK some time and figure this stuff out. But I do hopefully want to see a little bit more of a better attitude on the field and less handsy with those penalties, because he is costing the defense. He has cost the defense to continue to stay on the field and has cost them a couple of points in the long run. But let's get into the biggest news of the last 48 hours. And that is us losing not one, but two running backs and potentially for a few weeks. So after Kyren Williams had a absolute stellar performance on Sunday against Arizona, came to be now injured with an ankle sprain, initially reported as he was just going to make week 7, but as Sean McVay in his last presser yesterday, that it looks like he and Ronnie Rivers will be out for a period of time. Ronnie Rivers looks like he's going to be out for a knee injury. So looking about 4 to 5 weeks, probably being put on short-term IR. What is your initial reaction to this news?
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate, especially after Kyren has such a great game, and we'll go into that a little bit later, specifically Kyren himself. But you have to adjust. The NFL this year especially has been very injury bugged. A lot of people have been going down. If you pay attention to fantasy at all, like running backs are dropping like flies, and teams are going to have to adjust. And I think the two replacements that we picked up make sense. They're not world beaters, but again, it's already 5-6 games into the season. You're not going to find the cream of the crop right now. It's a little unfortunate. We just trade Cam Akers, but I feel like even if they knew this was coming, they were still fine with that move. So let's talk about two guys picked up. Zach, what's your reaction to these injuries? And Myles Gaskin's being signed off of the practice squad of Minnesota and bringing back Darrell Henderson.
No, I think these are two great moves. One, you have Darrell Henderson, who was a former Ram, really, I think got pushed out because of the whole Cam Akers situation. And now that part is removed, bringing him back just makes sense. He's a veteran player, played for the Rams, knows the playbook, understand the calls and what he's asked to do. And I think that's a smart move. And then again, bringing in more depth in Myles Gaskin. Again, I'm not a big follower of the Dolphins, so this is probably more your realm, since you and your brother-in-law talk about them all the time. But from the stats that we do have, he seems like he is a kind of a little bit of an equal to what Darrell Henderson brought a little bit. and we could kind of go through those specs. I'll let you go through Myles Gaskin. But for Darrell Henderson, I mean, they were both with the same team for the same period of time. Darrell Henderson was with the Rams from 2019 to 2022, and then Gaskin was with the Dolphins from 2019 to 2022, and then was with the practice squad for the Vikings this year. But Darrell Henderson played 50 games, rushed for 396 times, 1,742 yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, and then averaging 4.4. Is that right? Averaging 4.4 yards per carry?
Yes. Darrell Henderson for rushing averaged 4.4, and for receiving, he averaged around 7.2.
And so he had a total of 17 total touchdowns between rushing and receiving touchdowns in that short period of time. And let's also remember that he didn't, I mean, if you go back and look, like he really just played the last kind of 2 years, and then kind of was again one of those fallback pieces because of his rookie deal. So, you know, he was a stud last year. He was always a performer. We could always rely on Henderson to play, participate, get the yards that we need. He was always good for that extra 4 yards, you know, the 4 and push to get that extra 1 or 2 yards in there and get us that first down. So he was always just a consistent running back. He never had the big splashes. He never had the big, you know, 10, 15, 20 yard bursts. But when you needed that 4, 5, 6 yards, Darrell Henderson was always the person who you could rely on to get those yards and move the chains.
Yeah, Myles Gaskin, they both have very similar stat lines. Me and you were talking about this a little bit before we came on air. So Myles Gaskins has 7 rushing touchdowns, 6 receiving touchdowns, so totaling over probably 13, so similar amount of touchdowns. His rushing is 3.8 yards per carry, so a little bit less than Henderson, and his receiving per reception is 6.9, so again a little bit less than Henderson. But let me remind people, during the time that he played for the Dolphins, it wasn't this new look offense outside of a little bit of last year when he was starting to lose the starting role to Mostert. His first 2 years when he was around in that backfield as a committee, the Dolphins had a atrocious offensive line. I'm talking about bottom 10 in the league. I don't think they were definitely the worst. So my brother-in-law is a big Dolphins fan, so I do try to catch their games from time to time. Out of the AFC, they're probably my most watched team. Again, it's not a whole lot. I maybe watch 5, 6 games a season. So I got to see a good amount of Gaskins, and I liked him. Again, he's not Derrick Henry, and he's not a world beater, but he's a solid back. And I really thought he didn't get a lot of chances on Dolphins, especially with the bad O-line. And by time they got a better O-line, they already were bringing in backs like Mostert and other people to fill in, and they kind of gave up on him. So this is a guy who hasn't got a lot of chances to be starting back, and I hope he gets the chance here and shows what he can do with our O-line, which I think when our O-line's healthy, I do think they're a good rushing. They haven't been the best this year, but they're nowhere near as bad as that Dolphins O-line was whenever he was starting for him.
Yeah, so let's talk about the running back room now. So with Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers down, we're left with Zach Evans and Royce Freeman. Both 2 capable backs, and I do think that this is going to be Zach Evans' chance to win the lead spot, and I think he will try to get that lead spot going into Week 7. He's a rookie. He came from TCU, was in the 6th round pick from the Rams. We don't have a whole lot on him in his NFL debut because really he only played 4 rushing attempts for 10 yards. in this game against the Cardinals when Ronnie Rivers went down, and then Kyren Williams also needed a break. So don't have a lot, but if you look back at his time at he was at Ole Miss in 2022. My apologies. But when you look at that, he rushed for 936 yards, 9 touchdowns on 144 attempts. So
are you worried about his fumbling issue? Apparently he's been having in practice.
Yeah, and that is worrisome. And obviously, if the Rams were super confident, they may have only picked up one additional back, but they did end to go with 2. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams decided to activate all 4 for this game. But in reality, I do think obviously at minimum, it's going to be 3. If I'm the one to pick, it's going to be Evans, Freeman, and Henderson, only just because it's going to be a quick turnaround. Henderson already knows, like I said, Henderson knows the playbook. He knows what Sean McVay is asking for in the play calling. So I don't think that's going to be much of a curve, but I do think having Gaskin come in, I don't know if he's going to be quite ready to go.
Don't forget he's coming from Minnesota, which Aiden O'Connell is from the McVay tree. So there's going to be, it's not like he's completely in the dark.
Sure. But he's only been with that team for a short period of time as well and was on the practice squad, not really getting first man reps, things like that. So again, I don't disagree with your point, but I definitely think that he's probably going to be RB4. Like just if you think about that order, I think that's what the Rams are going to look like, in my opinion.
I think out of all our backs, the most potentially explosive is Gaskins. That's who I'm picking up personally in fantasy out of this to potentially come out.
The one thing that I will say, kind of like maybe to end this segment of the running back room, is that the Rams have to run the ball. And I said this last week. I keep posting this. They can't, just because they both Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers are down and they're kind of on RB3, RB4, and now 5 and 6. Like, they have to still give it a chance. I went through all 6 weeks of the game and broke it down, their statistics. And the only time the team that won was the team that had parity with its running game, the closest to parity for its running game and its passing game. The ones who were closest to the 50% mark in every single game of the first 6 weeks won the game. And the ones that we did not do our best at on offense was the ones where we were up almost 70% passing to less than 30% rushing.
I mean, there is a lot of context that goes into those numbers, right? Like situations, downs, flags.
But you can go through this and it's funny because, like I said, I think the same way. Like, I was thinking the same way, but possession, the Rams had more possession against the 49ers, but we still lost. Should have lost by 10, but McVay and the field goal thing. And then what was the other one? If I was going through and trying to find exactly what you were saying, like, there's that situational awareness. It's just so crazy that every game, the team that won was the team that was closest to that 50% mark. And the times that we blew it were the times that we had an out of whack performance where it was 70-30 or 70 plus 30, under 30.
Well, yeah, because we're playing, especially against the Eagles and 49ers, they're ball possession teams. And when they get a lead, they can sit on it and have long drives. The problem is the defense giving up 3rd and longs and not being able to get off the field. And so when they finally get off the field, the offense has to rush, and that inconsistency mixed with the run game. Like, I know I'm a little against the curve with people arguing for the run game, and I think that is a legitimate argument for why we lost the Cincy game. And I think is a legitimate argument for why we struggled a lot in Indy. I agree with those two games.
You don't think that's why we struggled and we'll get to the Cardinals game in a minute, but like that's not why we struggled with the Cardinals in the first half, because we didn't run the ball.
So we had a lot of drops. We had a lot of drops in the, like, if
we'll talk about it in a few.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in a few, but I think there's layers to this. I think it's a legitimate argument to say that McVay doesn't run or stay consistent with it. Yes, I agree with that. But I think people are lacking the context of sometimes defenses are stacking the box, asking for you to pass, and that's when we execute, and our execution has been off. There's times where we had plays and people are open, and one of the games Stafford was just a little off with his throws. Every other game has been the wide receivers haven't made the plays exactly the way they need to, inconsistently.
Well,
so,
we know McVay is a run. They're going to be a pass first team no matter what. That's just what they are, and that's how they. But it feels like when you give the run a chance, it gives Stafford a break. He's not always under pressure. He's not always the one who has to be the playmaker. We even saw in this last in the press conference after the game, Sean McVay was like, "Yeah, we need to just not always just let the defense dictate what we do on offense. We need to let our offense dictate what the defense is how the defense should protect against their offense."
Yeah,
so even McVay kind of noticed that. I think that he's trying to play protective, and he needs to not do that. He needs to play a little bit more aggressive.
I kind of take issue with the fact that people have to realize going into this game, we're in the bottom 10 of teams for rushing yards per attempt. And then you have to also add, yes, Williams had a really good second half of last week's game, but you can't just take one half of one game and instantly say and erase the rest of the games and how mediocre a rushing game has been up to this point. And you got to take that in context with what defenses are trying to do to you. And I understand you can't fully give up on it, but it's been so bad that we can't rely on it. And it's kind of costed us at situations. Now, the passing game hasn't helped either.
But if you're passing it every single time, it's going to make the defense know what you're going to do and be easier to defend. To not even give it a chance, which in the 3 games that they kind of refused to do it, it just allows the defense to kind of play what they want to do.
But same case if you get only 1 yard on first down and then you're in a passing situation, second and third down. I mean, it's same exact.
I don't know. I'm looking at the statistics. I feel like the Rams should look at the statistics. And like I said, based on I'll keep going and we'll keep looking at this throughout the year, but the team that has the most parity, and you even see it, like when we look at this Cardinals game, the first half was 70-30 in favor of the pass game. In the second half, it was 70-30 in favor of the run game. But at the end of the game, at the end, those actually parodied themselves, and you were at a 46-53 percentage for the pass and the run. But that was the team that had more parity of the pass and run.
Well, but it wasn't parity until they got the lead. It was parity because they started running out the clock.
Well, here's the thing.
They weren't getting the yards running.
The Rams play like they're behind when they're down by 3, or it's 0-0, or they're tied. They always feel like they have to play catch up when they are not even.
Yes.
They're less than a possession away from tying or going over and being in the lead. So that frustrates me a little bit, because again, I feel like when you play from behind, you have to pass the ball. And if you're only down by 3, you're not really playing from behind, especially when you're in the first half. So again, we'll move on, because I know we'll talk about this game, the Cardinals game. Because again, I was a little frustrated in the first half, and I brought a little bit on right now. Just 2 other quick notes. Sean McVay said on the Sean McVay show yesterday that the news that he was not going to be at the Rams game was a little bit overhyped. That they do, as their current baby plan goes, and we'll talk about that in here in a second, but he does not plan on missing any Rams games. Assuming they probably have some sort of inducement date, things like that. So they're planning on a date for when his wife Veronica is going to actually be induced. Plans can change. I know lots of people out there have mentioned, the baby comes when they want to come. I can tell you, I've had 4 kids. All of them were late. All of them we scheduled for an induction. Only one of them came when they wanted to, but it was on the day of the induction anyway. So it was kind of crazy like that. So we'll see. Raheem Morris will be taking the head coaching role. We kind of got clarity of that closer when it came to this Sunday. But if Sean McVay isn't there, we'll get Raheem Morris as the head coach. Michael LaFleur will be calling the offensive plays. Thoughts about that? Good?
I mean, I don't have children, so all I know is babies pop out when they want to, and you got to deal with it, and that's life.
That is life.
Hopefully the future head coach of the Rams in 20 years can come nice, no health complications, and
I don't know if ready. Yeah, I don't know if you watch the Coach McVay show. It's fascinating. You always kind of learn a little bit new things about Sean McVay. I kind of got the vibe he wants to stay around for longer. They were talking about him being like the coach of the flag football in 2028, and he's like, I plan on being the head coach of the Rams. And like, I think that's a missed thing that people caught. Like, things can change, but it kind of just sounded like he plans on being there for at least a longer than I think most people expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always situational, but he's having fun this year. He's having fun, and I think the only year that did show me that, like, if the situation gets bad enough because of life and stuff, not really like because I think he's a bad person or anything like that. But he went through a lot personally last year, and he was very clearly someone going through a rough time in life, which everyone goes through. I think it's fair to understand he could take a break from the team at any point, and I think fans just have to learn to accept that. He's young. He has a lot of life ahead of him, and I hope he stays with the Rams for the next 30 years. I think that would be a very successful 30 years, Zach. But, he controls that, and I think he's going to stay as long as he's having fun and being interested in football. And he's such a football nerd. I definitely understand that from like a personal passion point of view. Like, I have a lot of passion about writing code. I'm a software developer. So like when you get nerding out about stuff, like it keeps you going. And I don't think that passion's going to die anytime soon.
Yeah. I just thought it was fascinating because it was just kind of like, no one really brought that part up. Like, they were just asking, hey, would you coach the U.S. flag football? And he was like, oh, no. He's just like, not realizing if it would conflict. And he's like, I just plan on being the Rams head coach for a long time. So it was just kind of like this natural, like, rebuttal that he had, not something that seemed forced because he was being pressed about, like, broadcast job or blah, 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 blah. So it was just, like I said, fascinating. Last big news before we'll talk about, well, not really big news, but just highlight that just came up. John Rodriguez posted on X that the Rams send notice to the season ticket holders that prices will increase from 2024. Apparently, they've been frozen over the last 3 seasons, keeping the range from $600 to $3,750. And according to the team, it will rise to $720 to $4,050. So price increase coming to those who live in the LA area who purchase season tickets. I know a lot of fans are really mad about this because the cost is already so high. Of all of those who do buy season tickets, they sell them to non-Rams fans, and that's just how they get it. It is what it is. We've been talking about the whole SoFi Stadium being overtaken by well-traveled teams. Don't see how that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, I do think the cost a little high. I think it's very clear this team expects to have a really huge push, regardless of what happens this year. Push for a Super Bowl run uh, next year. I think this team is good enough to compete in the playoffs, but they're going to spend a lot of cap space, Zach, in free agency, and I think we could see them make some moves. So, yeah, in a first round pick and the first time in a century, it feels like. So it makes sense why they're pushing up the price. I do think it's too expensive, and they should do some discounts for local residents. I really do. It kind of annoyed me when the GM and like McVay are like, "Oh yeah, we're happy. We finally saw the fans out and stuff." It's like, yeah, because you guys set the prices so high and sell them to all these ticketing sites that just gouge away fans. And like, I mean,
I mean, I don't think Ticketmaster. I mean, they don't really have a choice. I think the NFL kind of they set the price of the tickets, but they don't set the price. They don't set the contracts with Ticketmaster and the fees that Ticketmaster charges and um, those things.
oh,
They do.
trust
They
me,
do
the
set the
base
price.
price is expensive.
It is. I don't disagree with you. Don't disagree with you at all of that. So that's something they can adjust. But let's go ahead and start talking about the actual game, the Cardinals versus the LA Rams.
Mhm.
Rams won 26-9. So we're super excited about that. First half was very rocky. Didn't look really good. Our defense looked pretty solid, but our offense just couldn't get their act together. And then in the second half, they made some really good adjustments, decided that the offensive line pretty much decided that they wanted to run the ball, and that's what they did. And very successful that in the second half.
Yeah, another two halves type of game. I think it's a little frustrating as fans that we can't get two consistent halves of football on either side of the ball. But this is a young team. We keep on talking about needing patience, that they're going to be growing all year. I think this could be a very scary team, Zach, when they put it all together. And it feels like they're so close to big plays. They're so close to being excellent. And they put it together from time to time, but they don't consistently do it for most of the game. It's like we are the ones shooting ourselves in the foot most of these games.
Yeah.
I would say the only game that was kind of where we lost it because the other team just won it was the Eagles. Uh, but I really do think with the Bengals and with the 49ers, we lost those games because we didn't execute correctly for 4 quarters. And when we do, and I think that's coming, I really do. This could be a team that gets hot. The schedule's getting easier. You got winnable games against tough, against decent teams, that if we can and we can put together some wins and these rookies can put together some consistency. Oh, Zach, this team can be a handful for whoever gets them in the wild card.
Yeah, but we got it. We got to fix some things up. And like, I mentioned, and we kind of ranted about it already earlier, is that they just have to continue just with what's working. And again, I get, we have Cooper Kupp, we have Puka Nacua, we have Matthew Stafford, we have a good O-line, and we should be able to throw the ball. But when that's not working, we need to be able to switch things up and try running the ball. We saw that in the first half. In the first half, we couldn't convert a third down. We were 0 for 5 in third down conversions. We only had 4 first down conversions. Had some beautiful plays. I mean, Cooper Kupp had over 100 yards in the first half alone. And a lot of it was that, kind of that 50-yarder, towards the end of the first half. But, we just really couldn't get anything moving.
Him
Stafford
and
was,
Stafford were off too. That was an off game for him and Stafford. He
I
missed
know.
2 touchdowns to Cup.
Yeah. I mean, and did get the one, which very very happy about. But again, they decided they only ran the ball 3 times. They had what was it, 18 plays, and so they were 83% passing.
They did try some screens in
They
defense
did.
from McVay a little bit. They did try screens, which
They
are
love
in effect
screens.
runs.
Sure.
Yeah, and screen execution was slightly better than last few weeks. Still not good. Still not getting a lot of yards. And did you notice, Zach? I don't know if you noticed this, but instead of having Tutu do a lot of the motion this game, they were trying to do Puka, which I thought was an interesting wrinkle.
Interesting. Yeah.
You probably
They were
didn't
just
notice that,
they were trying
but
to change things up.
yeah, and trying to change tendencies, and I don't think it worked. Honestly, I think Tutu's better as the motion man because of his speed and them like having to move safety help over to Tutu, or he's gonna gash you deep.
Yeah, for sure. We kind of look at some of the other stats. Matthew Stafford, he had a good game. He only threw for 24 times.
Should have
15
3 touchdowns.
should have. He had 15 completions, 226 yards, averaged 9.4 per attempt, 1 touchdown. He was sacked 3 times, which is never good. All of those, I believe, came in the first half. I don't think he was touched in the second half. Had a rating of 107.3. So he had a good game. There's sacks, but that's more the offensive line not being able to protect him than anything.
Yeah, a lot of drops this game, and some beautiful, like that pass to Kupp, like that's nearly perfect. It could have been probably a little bit further out, but man,
Sure.
that was
even
such a dime for the 50
even the
yard.
Puka touchdown, like that should have been a Puka touchdown. Steve Avila did work on that one guy coming up, and that should have been a touchdown. Couldn't
And
get it
we've
done.
seen Puka catch, like, I feel like this is like rookie jitters for Puka.
Sure.
Like he's gonna have drops every so often that he can catch because he's caught a lot harder balls, but like he's overthinking it. Like it's not ingrained in him. He's still trying to get used to the NFL speed. But I think next year, like I don't expect to see Puka drop a lot of those. But you're gonna have to go through growing pains. That's that consistency we're talking about. Like, I don't think he's doing it on purpose. I just think it's jitters, and eventually they'll get used to the speed and being in the game, and it'll be second nature.
Yep, agree. As far as the receivers go, Cooper Kupp was the lead receiver once again. This is not something that we should be super surprised at. With 7 reception, 148 yards, which again, 101 of those came in the first half alone. He did get a touchdown, and he also got that 49-yard long one to get us the 3 points before going into the half. Puka, he came in second with 4. So, that's pretty good. I still think, 7-4 for Puka and Kupp. That means we're still it's pretty even when it comes to that goes. But he only had 26 yards. Big surprise is Tutu Atwell only had 1 target, or 1 reception. I'm sorry, for 30 yards. So he had a big chunk play, but just not getting the looks over Cooper Kupp and Puka. But when they changed to running the ball, that happens.
Yeah, I definitely think with the wide receiving game, that's going to be one of those. I think Puka and Kupp are going to start having back and forth with better games and stuff like that, depending on defense, the coverages, and situations. But I really look at them as 1A and 1B. I know a lot of people are kind of freaking out because of the fantasy aspect of a down game for Puka. But I think it was what the defense was dictating, because they weren't respecting Kupp. You put a linebacker on the Triple Crown winner from just 2 years ago. That's just disrespect, Zach. And
you're
going to get burned.
Oh yeah, I saw a lot of 1-on-1s with Kupp and then doing 2-on-1s with Puka. Like,
that's so ridiculous.
Not sure. Again, I kind of get it. You're still thinking that maybe Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp had an excellent performance against the Eagles. Like, you should know that this was going to happen. But again, this is a Cardinals team whose defense is kind of not super stellar right now. So we should have expected what we saw in the second half pretty much in the first half too, and didn't. But let's go to our rushing game, because that's the one we mentioned a little bit. Kyren Williams, 20 carries, 158 yards, averaging 7.9 per carry, got his one touchdown, which everyone and their brother, except for the person who literally was watching the ball in front of them, knew that it was a touchdown. The ref knew that it was a touchdown. And man, did that stadium get electric when they all saw that on the big Oculus up at the top. But he just performed well, and just to see him become injured after that is it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I'm still not fully sold on Kyren as a lead back, but he's starting to convert me some. I think he's very good on outside zone runs, but down the middle, I still have a little hesitation that he can do that. Again, it's one half of a good performance against the Cardinals. And I think people had to, just measure their expectation, because our ground game for most of the season has been terrible in between the 20-yard lines. We're good in the red zone. I won't disagree that he's amazing in the red zone. He knows how to find the end zone. He's very, very good at that. But when it comes to running down the field, that first drive coming out of half has been the only drive this season we've been able to run at will against a team.
Sure. I mean, I don't, other than maybe one other game that I remember, they don't really give it a chance. I kind of want to go back and kind of look at that, because those chunk plays, I mean, it wasn't just.
It was all running big chunk plays, like 7, 8, and then a 20-yarder, then like 5, then another 12, something like that. And
so 17, 6, 14, 10, 6, 2, 6, -1. So, I mean, yeah, there was a lot of big chunks in there, but I'm just glad that, like, when they did get a 2, that they didn't give up after that. They tried again just to see if this was a fluke or not, and it ended up being successful. So that's just all I want to see. Is I don't want to see them just. I feel like McVay just sometimes just gives up on it because it wasn't working that 1 or 2 times, and just not wanting to go back to it unless necessary. That's just, again, I've already tooted that horn. I'm not going to keep beating it over the head. I think Kyren Williams has proven himself. This is his second over 100 yard gain that he's had. And he's been averaging, for the most part, or he's been averaging 4.7 this season, which is, again, really good for a team who doesn't run the ball as often as they should. So I'm happy. I'm happy with his performance. He seems like he's a good player. He seems like he's willing to put in the work. Good atmosphere, good personality to be around. So I'm hopeful that this injury doesn't last too long, and so that we can get him back out and see what he really can show, and show that this is not a fluke scenario.
Yeah, and some really good pass blocking by him too this game. Some solid pass blocking.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think he's been, like, overall, he's been a pretty good at all 3 areas. He's been good at the pass block. He's been good at the receiving. He's been good at the rushing.
I think he's great at the receiving. Fantastic.
He only had really that one bad game against Cincinnati, where he had a couple of those drops. But, like, I 100% agree with you. I think he's done the admirable job of any running back who is a triple threat. He may not always have the big yards, and that could be the play calling's fault. It could be his fault. It could be the defense being better, whatever. But
that was such a weird game, Zach. If you think about it, the Cincy game, because they were on point with their connection before that game, and afterwards they've been perfectly fine. It was just like that game, him and Stafford, like, I don't know if they like did something different in their routine, both of them, and they were just like, but we haven't seen
Well,
that
so
since.
it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I just happened to listen. I always listen to like the first like 10 minutes of the Kelly Stafford podcast just to see if she mentions anything football related, and she did bring kind of that up how like Stafford hates primetime games. Like he hates primetime games just because it just feels like it puts you out of whack. And he much prefers the 1 o'clock game. So maybe that just has something to do with it. It was prime time. One of them, both of them were out of whack, things like that. But just
I
to kind of
wonder what our
mess it
win
up a
rate
note.
with Stafford is on prime time versus regular.
We'll find that out and put that on the next episode. All right, so we talked about our offense. Offense was, like I said, bad first half, great second half. The only thing that I'll note is it seemed like the offensive line and kind of what I heard from Havenstein and even some of the comments that Sean McVay said was that the offensive line was kind of urging Sean McVay to try to run the ball a little bit, just so that they never, when as far as I understand, when you're an offensive lineman, yes, it's a lot more work to try to push a gap open so that the running back has somewhere to run. But when you're trying to come back, you're now trying to like push yourself back and kind of putting yourself a little off balance when you're trying to pass protect. And so they like the opportunity to be able to kind of like push their will on the defense instead of having to kind of jump back and now protect Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
Just found that interesting.
Yeah, and coming in to replace that right guard, the former Steeler, I can't
Dotson.
think. Yeah, Dotson, fantastic game. I thought, I'm going to be honest, that he looks better than Noteboom, a lot better.
I think so, and I think we kind of have found our set, and I don't think the Rams are going to go away with it unless something happens. I do think that the set that we saw this week is going to be the set that we're going to see against the Steelers. It's a good group. It's a group that's performing well. They need to give Stafford 2 more seconds. They need to give him a little bit more time. But if they can give that, this offensive line is there. I definitely think that in the draft next year they're going to look at another offensive lineman. I could see them looking specifically at that left tackle. Not saying anything about Jackson, but I still think that might be their weak link, and that they're going to want to try to tighten that spot up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the defense. You want to talk about them?
Yeah. This defense held the Cardinals to a big fat 0 in the second half and held them to all field goals. Third down, Zach, especially in the first half, they were atrocious on third down. They let a lot of long third downs contain. We have seen this now like 3 or 4 weeks in a row with mobile QBs. This D line pushes up the field and cannot keep contained. I don't think a lot of it's Byron Young. I think a lot of it is your pal Michael Hoyt, and just man, he's not it. We say that every week, but not it, and they need to try to address that because
They need to, but
we're getting gashed by Joshua Dobbs on the ground.
yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do, especially when your 2 running backs go down, and now you have to try to replace them, and you have to use some of your cap debt to replace that. So, I kind of see us. I really do kind of see us kind of sticking it out with what we got. Now, I will say, yeah. So your observation is spot on. Our Rams defense is not good against mobile QBs. We're kind of getting into a little bit of break of that. We had a hard road when you had Anthony Richardson, then followed by Jalen Hurts, and then followed by Joshua Dobbs. Like these, and it's hard. It's hard on them. They don't like it. I
That's
think
the
they
NFL
know that.
future.
It is, but I
That's
think
strong.
that's the current weakness of the Rams is the mobile quarterback. So I think you're gonna get a break this week. Kenny Pickett is not as mobile as the other ones have been. I think he's only ran for 12 yards total.
Honestly, Zach, I think if you're fantasy, I would pick up the Rams defense against this Pittsburgh offense.
I kind of saw that. I'm always nervous. I always feel like the Rams always do bad when I put like Stafford or um, the Rams defense in. I always hate to jinx myself on that, but I don't disagree. I think like they could do really well against it. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll talk about it in a few seconds.
But I mean, if you kind of, I mean, you look at it, we got the Steelers, we got the Cowboys, we got the Packers. Like, we're not going to get away too much before we get kind of mobile quarterbacks back again. But yeah, the Rams got to do something about that. I mean, it feels like it's been 2 years that the Rams just do terrible at third and longs. Like, they just always seem to give it up when it's past, when it's longer than third and 10, they always seem to be able to blow it. And it's just getting
Well,
kind of frustrating.
so historically, especially with Raheem Morris, we'd always have like 12-yard zones when there's 10 yards to go. This year, it's been blitzing on third down because we can't get pressure. And now he feels like he has to blitz. And you have like an open man, or like you have a linebacker on a running back or something like that, and like you have Michael Hoyt on the tight ends, like, and we're giving up third downs to tight ends people that haven't heard of. Like, yeah, it's a little rough out there when you have Michael Hoyt covering people in coverage. So
Yeah.
because you want to blitz.
But our defensive line did really well, especially without
Yeah,
Bobby Brown being in there. Turner came in and everything seemed to flow pretty well. I mean,
good.
yes, when I say our defense was fully electric, they allowed the Cardinals kind of to run down the field, but again, they never broke. I know
No.
Rams fans are kind of tired of the bend not break, but they never broke. They kept them to 3 field goals the first half and then shut them out completely in the second half. So this defense is not a bad defense.
Nope.
They're continuing on that bend not break mentality because they don't have the elites in every single spot. This team is good enough. This defense is good enough to beat any team. We've seen it. When you can keep the Eagles to under 20 points, that should have meant that we could have won that game. The offense couldn't handle it. Again, they're the only team to really match well against the 49ers. We saw
Outside
the 49ers
Browns.
outside of the Browns. But the Browns also have an electric defense. So
Yes.
it's something that you're just going to look, this team can only get better. I mean, outside of this year, like this defense can only get better from where they're at right now. Their rookies are doing really well for rookies.
They are not. This defense isn't going to be electric at all this year. You're not going to get a lot of turnovers. You're not going to get a lot of flashy plays. You're not going to get a bunch of pick sixes. But this defense will force field goals in games, and this defense will contain electric offenses to the point of giving the team the ability to be in games. Now, Jordan Rodriguez puts it very well. They're complementary. This defense isn't meant to be electric. They didn't build it for that. They don't have the personnel for that. It is meant to go along with the offense that is top 10. And I think this defense could get into that edge of top 10 potentially if these rookies come along even more. But yeah, like I think people have weirdly like hated on this defense, and I thought they've been good, especially considering uh, all the new players in the secondary. We lost our best cornerback, and we're in top 5 for allowing wide receiver yardage. Think about that. And
it's excellent.
you guys constantly tell me how terrible Derion Kendrick is, but yet we're in the bottom 5 for allowed yardage for wide receivers.
Sure, but that I don't think that includes the penalties. That again, I'm going to go on the penalty part of it, and I think that's where he's has the biggest mistakes is he's causing a lot of penalties, which puts us in bad spots. But let's congratulate Rose Boom, got us an interception. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That definitely turned the tide because I believe that was that in the red zone? Was in the
It was in the red zone, and we were up by 8 points, so it was still a one-score game technically.
Yeah. So that was awesome. We had two official sacks on him. Jonah Williams and Byron Young both got a sack. Bunch of tackles for loss, 6 of them, I believe. Let's see. Why can I not find Aaron Donald on my sheet? He had 5 total tackles. 3 solo, 3 tackles for loss. So Aaron Donald was finally being Aaron Donald this game, putting the pressure on. He was chasing Dobbs around, and he was when Aaron Donald's having a hard time trying to chase Joshua down, Dobbs. You're in some problems, but did really well. We did see a little bit of Trey Tomlinson in there. Duke Shelley came in to play it towards the end. So just some observations that I saw there. We did get the forced fumble. It was kind of a combination of things, but Yeast was the one who came out with it. Turner was very close and could have also came out with it. I was listening to, he did a thing with JB Long, and when he saw the ball, he was hoping he thought he was going to go score a touchdown. He thought he was going to scoop and score. And he said Yeast just kind of like ran into him too, and they both kind of landed on the ball, and Yeast came out with it fully. But just kind of a fun story for that. So as far as the defense goes, they played well. Obviously, when they're consistently put back on the field, especially in the first half, they just kept kind of being brought back out. You're going to get some more, some soreness. You're going to get some wear on that defense, and it's going to cause a little bit more errors. So I think that's what we're seeing on that. Anything else you want to add about the defense before we briefly talk about the special teams?
No. I mean, good effort by team when you only allow field goals against a very I wouldn't say great Cardinals team, but they have a lot of spunk. They have a lot of fight. Like, that is not a team that has laid over for anyone last 4 or 5 weeks. And honestly, they should have 3 wins, realistically.
They were close in almost every one of their games outside of ours and maybe another one. 49ers, yeah. The other ones, like you said, they were very close, and then they beat the Cowboys. So we'll see how we can go up against them here in 2 weeks. Special teams, fine, not great. Austin Trummel, our punt returner,
great return.
He had a couple great returns, but then
a fumble.
I mean, that was a nasty hit.
I think it was unlucky because it looked like I think it was a backup linebacker, his knee was like up in the air, and Tremmel like tried to hurdle a Cardinal as he was on the ground, and like his knee kind of accidentally hit the ball. That's what it looked like to me. Maybe you saw it differently.
Yeah, it was just I think it was just it was hard to watch. I mean, he like you said, he kind of was like tripped over and like jumped over, however you want, and it just, he got tackled in the air, and it was a bad thing. But I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, it is obviously his fault, but it wasn't one of those ones where like he caught it and was tackled and dropped it. Like he was like in air when he was hit.
He's been a good returner. I don't think he's electric, but man, I don't want to go through what we went through in early 21 until we finally found Powell, right? Like, that was atrocious.
When we had Kupp back there consistently being the punt returner, I'm like, why is like Ben Skoranek not back there? Like, I mean, I know he's kind of up towards the front of the special teams, making sure everything is going fine and kind of like last man scenario. But yeah, it's just one of those things that's weird.
I love Kupp, but he's a terrible returner.
Well,
Let's
I just don't want to see him get injured. That was more my concern, is that he was going to get like beat to death by these special teams people. Maher, he lived another day. He got 4 for 4. Longest
He's
was
good, guys.
43.
Like I don't know what people want more. Like
He had one that was kind of wonky kick, which looked like it could have almost missed.
he's a wonky kicker. I mean, he's
He's an
not great, but I
but
mean,
I think he's one of those. He's going to be one of those people, like, you're never really going to want to. You'd never really want him to be the one to decide the game winner. Um,
nope.
he's not going to give you that 50, 53, 56.
But he does. He can hit 50-yarders.
He
He's
can.
just
You're right.
extremely unpredictable kicker. I think that's what you're trying to say. He is
Yes.
not consistent, which
He's
is a
not
theme with
consistent.
this team.
And it seems like if he's in the 40s, he's pretty good. If he's in the 30s, he's not so great, which is just kind of bizarre. And he got his 2 extra points, so we'll give him to that. Ethan Evans is being a monster like he is. Sign that guy to a contract for life.
He's good. Still need a little bit of hang time.
Yes,
but he's learning. He's getting better, and you notice over especially from 3 games ago, his hang time is a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting it into the right spot. It's just getting there too fast. Like you said,
yes.
He needs his hang time, needs to be up a little bit. So that kind of roughs up that game, I think. I mean, if you go look at the PFF scores, the Rams were in the top of a bunch of different position types. QB, Matthew Stafford had 90, which was first among QBs. Kyren Williams was third amongst running backs. Cooper Kupp, second among wide receivers. Kevin Dotson, second among O-linemen. Byron Young, third among edge rushers. Obviously, Aaron Donald, second amongst defensive tackles. Kobe Durant, sixth amongst cornerbacks. So all really doing really well. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. This team it's good. It's a good team.
It is good. It is. We can kind of cap the preview. We could preview the Steelers real quick. I mean, the Steelers are a 3-2 team. They're going to be playing back at they're going to be playing for the 3rd week in a row in SoFi Stadium. And yeah, I mean, this team's led by Kenny Pickett, 95 for 159 attempts to completions to attempts, 1,027 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. The rushing game isn't really strong. Najee Harris, 63 carries for 247 yards. And then George Pickens, their star receiver, 22 receptions, 393 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
He's good. I mean, yeah. I think Pickens is a fantastic wide receiver. Pickett has not been good. Not using the weapons he has. And I like the Steelers' offensive weapons. I think Najee Harris is a solid back. Freiermuth is a good tight end. He hasn't been used this year at all. And then Deontay Johnson, I believe his name, their second wide receiver. He's a good veteran that's been kind of underutilized. Like Pickett has been struggling to read defenses. So I'll be interested to see kind of how Raheem Morris approaches this Steelers offense, because we may not have – so their O-line is good. We may not have to rush to get pressure just because they're not running the ball consistently. So they're going to be dropping back more. It'd be interesting to see. I think the big matchup that will decide this game, Zach, is our offense versus their defense. Their defense is electric. I would say probably the 3rd best defense in the league, behind Cleveland and the 49ers. I really, really like the Steelers defense. A really good pair of safeties up there with Fitzpatrick, can't think of the name. I'm terrible at names, guys. But really, really loaded up on linebackers and free agency. And then you got TJ Watt. He's a monster. He's going to be a handful. Yeah, and like Cam Howard. I think I'm mispronouncing that name. Again, I'm a faces person. But a really good D line. And Zach, our offensive line, we got to make sure the running game is going. It's going to be a challenge with a lot of backup running backs. But if we can just get some production and not be predictable with the pass, their DBs are good. So I think Tutu's going to probably get a little bit more use. They've been gashed this year, especially by other teams in the air. So, like, it's weird. I think their defense is better than the stats kind of show on paper when it comes to air yards. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, so I'm coming from a Bengals family. I hate the Steelers. That's just, even though I'm an LA Rams fan, like that's just like the thing that they breathed into me. Like, I don't have to be a Bengals fan, but I can't never be a Steelers fan. And yeah, I'm kind of looking at some of these stats. As far as yards allowed, the Steelers have 409 yards allowed compared to the Rams 341. So our defense kind of looks a little bit better than theirs as far as that stat range goes. We will not have to deal with Deontay Johnson. He's on IR. So he will not be there for them, nor will their offensive tackle, Dan Moore. He's questionable.
I think you also have to take into account that we played really possession-heavy teams. Like the Bengals with Burrow were possession. They were trying to run out the clock. They weren't trying to get yards. Same thing with the Eagles and same thing with 49ers. So our defense has let up less yards. But, that was kind of by design for most of the teams we faced this year.
Sure. And A-Rob is on the Steelers, so we'll get to see him in black and yellow.
Who?
A-Rob. Yeah,
I mean, hey, I liked the signing last year, and I think it's a good signing for Steelers. He's a solid wide receiver 3, but he hasn't done much.
But I mean, this is going to be a tough team. I mean, the AFC North is kind of this weird, tough division. Baltimore's leading at 4-2, but the Steelers beat Baltimore. And then they also beat Cleveland. And Cleveland beat the 49ers. So, it's like you kind of go down this whole rabbit hole of the possibilities. But they're a 3-2 team. We're a 3-3 team. This is going to be a hard fought match. This is a game, again, the Rams should win this one just based on talent alone. But anything can happen. So, any final bits about this game?
I mean, it's going to be their defense versus our offense. If our offense scores points, gets touchdowns, we're going to win this game. I think we have to get above 18 points. I think our defense can keep them below like 16 points. But,
sure.
We're going to have to score touchdowns this game, and it's not going to be easy against this D-line. I really do think that's going to cause us a lot of issues.
I think so too. And it's like, again, we don't want to rehash, but if you don't, you got to run the ball sometimes. I don't care. It doesn't have to be an even split, but like, I just want to see us not give up on that, even though we have our two RB1 and RB2 are out.
That's why I wish we would do more play action after runs and stuff like that to start forcing defense to think about the potential play action off of a run. And
true, I agree.
Can lighten the box a little bit too.
I just want to see Matthew Stafford like move a little bit more. Like, I know he's a pocket thrower, but like, he looks more fit. He looks slimmer. He looks like he should be able to be a little bit more agile. And we've seen it here or there. He's gotten some rushing yards, but I want to see a little bit more. of the play action. I want to see those things, but that just may be where we're at this moment.
I think he hates play action, so you got to cater to him.
That's true. He is our Super Bowl quarterback, so in Stafford we should trust. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. Thank you to everyone who listens to this podcast. We're growing by the numbers each and every week, and it's only because of you guys why we continue to do this. If you guys have feedback for us, please leave it down in the comments below. Leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to us. Please do that. Please make sure you subscribe to that podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or whether it's on YouTube. We're trying to really boost those numbers on YouTube. Once we hit 100 subscribers, I'm going to do a giveaway for one of our ECR t-shirts. So please be on the lookout for that. But you can also find us on all types of social media. You can find us on X at East Coast Rams is our main one. You can find us on our personal ones at Zach Mayer for me, at Ram Fan Ashton 1 for Ashton. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Threads. You can find us pretty much everywhere. So please continue to do that. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@EastCoastRams. Much appreciate everybody again for listening. We hope for another Rams victory. We want to have another fun, enthusiastic podcast for you guys next week. Maybe we'll try to find a guest. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, guys, let's get it done on Sunday. Let's get another victory. And everyone have a great rest of the week. All right. Whose house? Rams house.